Kalikumutima and Company Advocates, translating visions into reality. For more information, visit our website www.kalikumutima.com.
All right, ladies and gentlemen, a good evening. Thank you so much for joining us as we augment discourse and have a conversation on condominium investments in Uganda. And we'll be exploring the context, the regulatory shortfalls, and the opportunities. My name is Howard Mwesigwa, and I have the humbling privilege of leading the department at Kalikumutima and Company Advocates on energy, environment, and sustainability. And I would like to welcome you warmly. And in the first place, I would like to extend our apologies to you. We had undertaken to start at exactly 7, but we began about 14 minutes or so late, and we apologize for that. It was due to some technical glitches, but we are glad that we are finally here, and we're glad that you took off time to join us as we again be part of this conversation. And I promise it's going to be very insightful, it's going to be very enlightening, and I hope that you will enjoy it. At the end, we'll have a few minutes for some questions. Please do prepare some questions for our speakers tonight. And so to just give you a quick introduction of our speakers, in the first place, we have our very own host, Council Deo Kalikumutima, who is the Chief Executive Partner here at Kalikumutima and Company Advocates, but he also has a great wealth of experience in real estate law and advisory, among others. But we also have Mrs. Lucy Kaitesi Wamimbi, who again is a property consultant and is joining us as well on this X space. And she has a degree in psychology, and she has worked in sales and marketing and advising for over 15 years. So you have 15 years there speaking to you tonight, but she's also a real estate professional, especially in light of this X space, and she's been doing that for 10 years now, and she's been representing developers and agencies in the context of real estate development, but she's also married with 3 children, and so we're really delighted to have her again beyond work time and family time. She has decided to join us. We do not take that lightly. We also have architect Verna Mbabazi, who has been an architect for over 2 decades now, and previously she worked with the National Housing and Construction Company Limited, but she also served with the Kampala City Council Authority as a councillor representing the architects, and she's a member of the Architects Registration Board, and she's also the chairperson of the Urbanism Cluster with the Uganda Society of Architects. And so she is also an architect, of course, in that regard, in private practice, and she's married as well and a mother of 4. So ladies and gentlemen, you can see that the panel is well constituted, and we are going to delve right away in the discourse. And in the first place, I would like to invite our very first speaker, Council Deo Kalikumutima, to just give us the context in light of condominium investments in Uganda, to just paint for us a picture what the landscape looks like at present, and the rationale for our engagement, very timely engagement this evening. As you know, in the past couple of weeks, the condominium question has been a major component of the media, and about the 13th of August, we had an inspection being undertaken by the Honorable Minister for Housing, Honorable Pasis Namuganza, together with a number of other dignitaries as well, and they made certain findings. And Council Deo Kalikumutima was part of the party that was undertaking that inspection on behalf of the diaspora owners in that sense, and he was also part of the party that made certain findings, and we would love to hear from him what he found on ground. And so I think that would be a very good place for us to get this conversation going. So without any further ado, I would like to invite Council Deo Kalikumutima to set us off. Council, you're most welcome.
Thank you so much, Mr. Howard, Mark, Mwesigwa, and to the wonderful ladies who have joined us today. More importantly, our listeners, both in the diaspora and in Uganda, good evening, good morning, and maybe good night somewhere. It's a Friday evening here in Kampala, so Howard, you'll allow me to go a bit unconventional and let off some steam. It's been a long week, a long day. One, allow me not that this is not personal, this is not political. I thank God, by the way, that I don't belong to any political party in Uganda. So this is purely business. Purely business. How can we do better? For me, this is a reality check. Not pointing fingers, but addressing the scenario or the situation as it is. Like you said, for the last couple of weeks, maybe months, there has been discussion on the condominium question. Now, for me, as a believer, as a Christian, even when there's a problem, I look at the positive. Even when there are challenges, I must quickly look out for the positive. Now, before I go into my story, I'm telling my story here. Before I go into the introduction, allow me delve into the context and specifics, this particular inspection that you talked about. Kalikumutima and Company Advocates has been privileged to represent diaspora interests in Uganda. To be specific, UNA, the Uganda North America Association, the Uganda-UK Trade Convention, to mention but a few. But we also represent interests locally. Now, our clients invest in Uganda. To be precise, the diaspora invests millions of dollars annually. Actually, the last I checked, it was over $500 million. You may not know, you can go and check the statistics. So it is only fair that in every transaction, we look out for value. I'll be touching at a later stage the role that we play as a firm and maybe Kalikumutima Deo. We must do our best to ensure that our clients get value. So every time some of our developers go to the diaspora, they present, I need to be as polite as I can be. I don't call it hot air. They have invested a lot in graphics. For me, they present cosmetics that are not a true reflection of what they have on the ground. And please don't get me wrong, the real estate sector, the housing sector, the condominium aspect of the housing sector is very, very lucrative. And I know the wonderful ladies, Lucy and Mbabazi, will speak to that. They will talk about the opportunities and everything. So the opportunities are there. But we have a few elements that are distorting what is supposed to be a good thing. I normally use an analogy of expecting a puppy and you presented a rat. That's why I'll overemphasize, you'll allow me overemphasize the issue of value. So as a result, we have many clients who are disgruntled, who are unsettled, who are disoriented because they have not received value for their money. When we did this inspection, maybe before I rush into it, the diaspora community, among others, and local owners petitioned the IGG. Previously, some had petitioned the Honorable Minister of State for Housing, Honorable Pasis Namuganza, and they sought administrative intervention. This is one of the remedies that I will address later. So that is how we end up with the IGG, who was kind enough to host the owners and the developers and the media. It was unfortunate, but I thank God that it happened because the discussion started. Back home, we call it sleeping on one's rights. People had challenges, but they were not speaking up. Finally, they did speak up. The IGG tasked her office and Ministry of Lands to investigate. That's why the inspection was done. I must report that what we saw on the ground was appalling, unfortunate, but there's still a lot of hope, and I'll explain why later. Now, In most of the sites that we visited, and I'm not going to list the developers here because some of them have taken it so personal, but they know, you know yourselves, you do. The basics, common places are not in place. Children play areas are not in place. The accesses, poor. We are talking about shoddy works, issues of structural integrity, mechanical and electrical issues, plumbing. You have in some places sewage spilling, waste management. Now, I know, Howard, you're very passionate about the environment, just like I am. And I hope that before we go to sleep tonight, you'll touch the aspects of the environment. Waste management is very pertinent. I'll shortly touch the issue of sustainability. And we all know that with sustainability, we are talking about continuity. So we moved around all these properties, and it was sad. It was sad, but for me, this is an opportunity. In this very unfortunate incident, where these developers are going to pay, because I'll talk about remedies, we learn our lessons and we must do better. So the inspection was done. Subsequently, the IGG called for a stakeholder meeting. I'm glad that this report is out. Without pointing fingers, we have had challenges with reports in our country, but this one came out pretty fast. And we hope that it will not stop at the report. In the petition that was presented, one of the prayers was for investigation, 2, cancellation of occupation permits, revocation of investment licenses, prosecution. We hope all these will be actualized, not just to send a message, but to put things right. It is my humble and considered opinion that it is incumbent on every Ugandan. Every Ugandan has a duty to do things right, a duty to follow the law. Later I'll be talking about compliance, and I'm sure Architect Mbabazi will also talk about it. We have these duties, and we must be alive to the realities of the day. So, like I said, it's purely business. We have to get value. Unfortunately for our diaspora clients, they come in for a week or two, and they have to run back to look for money. They need bread on the table. They are hoodwinked. And how I can summarize that predicament is the developers being too profit-minded. In the 21st century, earlier I was humbled to attend with you the CEO forum where we joined the captains of industry. In the 21st century, some of the key drivers are globalization, technology, the environment. You must do certain things in a certain way. You recall we were talking about sustainability. Now, how are you going to have sustainability when you're putting up a structure that is developing cracks within a year? I know Architect Mbabazi is going to talk about the defects liability period. Now, and I hope the developers are on. We shared this link because we also need them to tell their story. This is not a court of law. We'll be touching this evening the aspect of risk, both operation and construction. And under there is the issue of maintenance. The owners who buy subsequently are supposed to maintain. Once the developer hands over to you, you're supposed to maintain. So yes, we do have owners who are also not doing their part. But again, from what we have seen, and allow me to use another analogy, if I buy a car that has a faulty engine and gearbox, what am I going to maintain? And maybe and I will request at a later stage Architect Mbabazi to advise, is the defects liability period of 1 year enough? Let's assume that it is. What state? I'm not an architect, but we are looking at common sense and logic here. What state should the building be in? Should it have cracks? I don't think so. So that is just to give us context. Where are we coming from? What do we want from this discussion? Because I'm going to tell you, listeners, this discussion is continuing. Today we are talking about condominium. Tomorrow we will talk about environment. We are going to touch the different aspects of life because sustainability cuts across. It's in business, it is in political, it cuts across. We must ensure that there is continuity. That's why we are having this discussion, not only to skirt around the problem, but talk about the solutions. How can we do better? The regulators have shied away from this discussion. I hope they are online. They were not able to come on. I'm not going to point fingers, but there's clearly a gap here. There's a lot more that we can do. There is something being done, do not get me wrong, but we can surely do better. Now, to the introduction. Many say that the question of condominium is new in Uganda. No, it is not. The law came into place in the year 2001. That is approximately 13 years ago. Well, it depends on what you understand by new. Sorry, I beg your pardon. So it depends on what you understand. 23 years ago, I've been corrected. By new, is 23 years ago new? No, it's not. It's not. But I will note that Uganda is a developing country and a beautiful one indeed. And I encourage all of you to invest here. Notwithstanding these small challenges, you will be guided continuously on how to do better. I'll later talk about the role of the farm. So we do have the law in place. And I thank God that we have embraced this as Uganda because it is an opportunity to embrace sustainability. Like I said earlier, the real estate sector is lucrative. The housing sector indeed is. And there are enormous opportunities that the two ladies will talk about. We currently have a housing deficit of about 2.4 million. And to be precise, in the urban, it's about 210,000. So the opportunities are there. With urbanization, a growing middle class, the surge of expatriates we are talking about, oil, rent, people are making billions from. So the opportunities are there. But how do we dive in? How do you just jump in there because there's an opportunity? No. Earlier we talked about, before today's discussion, we were emphasizing market analysis. Before you dive in, understand the market that you're going to deal with. And I hope these developers adjust to this. Understand not only your competition, but your client. Like I said, we have three drivers, among others today, that are key. Globalization, environment, technology. The customer, the client is very pertinent. You must understand their needs and preferences and tailor your services accordingly. Are we doing this marketing analysis? I don't think it's being done right. Can it be done? Yes. That is why I'm going to overly emphasize, and I'm glad that we have professionals here. We need to use professionals. You think you're saving money by not engaging Deo, then you come to me when it's gone bad, and now how do we do this? How? Prevention is better than mitigation. I encourage us to focus on prevention. We must engage the professionals early enough. Risk. Are we doing our risk analysis right? Or are we just diving in there? So, I know we started late, but allow me just 5 more minutes. Then I have to be a gentleman, or at least pretend to be one. The ladies, our dear guests, have to talk to us. Allow me quickly go to the role of Kalikumutima, the farm and maybe the person. I'll quickly touch, I'm going to talk about due diligence, very briefly compliance because the professionals are here, then risk management. I'll start with due diligence. In life today, you must do due diligence about everything. You must do due diligence about your partner, about the church you go to. You must do due diligence about the food that you eat. Literally speaking, about the person who's going to drive you. So in business, you must do due diligence. Because in this, you discover a lot. Now, we have presentations that have been shared, but briefly, this block of isolated units that are separately owned is not sitting in air. It is sitting on land. One, you must carry out a land search. Yes, it's done at the land office, but for me, that is not enough. You must appreciate the history on that file. You must go to the ground. Engage a surveyor, land surveyor, to ascertain the acreage for you, to ascertain that this is the right parcel. We have a very unfortunate incident that we've been dealing with where a diaspora client constructed a block on a neighbor's parcel. And the neighbor watched on. After 1 year, neighbor comes up and says, "Hey, who are you? What are you doing on my land?" And the client says, "But you looked on for 1 year." So you must engage a surveyor to go to the ground, ascertain the acreage, ascertain the boundaries. Engage a land valuer. What is the value of this land? Engage your architect. Engage a structural engineer. Engage a quantity surveyor. Again, architect Mbabazi will go into the intricacies. Engage these professionals from the tick. We have shared a checklist and we have one on the Ministry of Lands website too. Tick box. The professionals that you must engage and why. Then you have a detailed report. I must appreciate the firm that I serve as the chief servant. I'm the chief servant at Kalikumutima and Company Advocates. We are a pool of professionals. We have attorneys, valuers, surveyors as part of the firm. Engage us, will go to the ground and give you a full report. Now, once your due diligence is done and in order, then you go back to the table. Have your negotiation done. The paperwork is done the right way. But again, in the paperwork, you must be as keen as you can be. Proper description of the property. Is it a lease? Is it Milo? Is it freehold? What is the acreage? How many square meters? Again, in the inspection, you realize what we saw on the ground is not in sync with what is on the titles or what is presented in the paperwork. Howard is told that he has bought 50 square meters, for example. On the ground, he has 40. How will you discover this in 2 weeks if you don't engage professionals? So the paperwork must be done right. Proper identification of the parties, proper description. The terms have to be as clear as possible. The consideration, that is the monetary value, has to be clear. The installments. Now, the common places, the details, have to be in that agreement. We have many clients complaining about swimming pools. Oh, they told me there's a swimming pool. Now we don't even have a pond. That must be clear. You must confirm that it is on the ground. It must be documented. Please note that this is business. They are not doing you a favor. Quid pro quo. They are not doing you a favor. Value for value. It's that simple. Then, why I insist on professionals, and again, Architect Mbabazi will follow through on this. This agreement is supposed to have accompanying documents. The drawings, drawn up by a professional, signed, stamped. And the drawings that they attach and give you or annex. Hello? The drawings that they attach or annex must be the same drawings that were presented to the approving authority. Many a times you're given a drawing, but it must be the same. And I will request architect Mbabazi to talk about this extensively. And you appreciate why it must be the same. Why it has to be attached. It speaks to what you have bought. Now, let me quickly go to compliance. One of the key roles that we play as a firm is compliance. On acquisition, to investigate and confirm or verify that the developer who's selling to you, or the first buyer, because now we have first, second, third, but in this scenario, let me touch the developer, was compliant from day one. They have an occupation permit. They have all the drawings, structural, architectural, fully endorsed. We check that. Then for the investors who are starting this business, we take you through step by step to make sure that you comply with each stage that architect Mbabazi is going to take us through. Fortunately, the architects here, they're the ones who come up with these drawings. So she's better placed to, to talk about the architectural drawings, the condominium plan, who approves it, why does it go to the vetting committee of Department of Housing. The vetting committee just verifies, it does not approve. The approval is done by the controlling authority. In Kampala, for example, it's done by KCCA. And again, I must note that not every city has a controlling authority. She will explain why. Now, we make sure there is compliance through all those stages. Now, let me quickly touch the issue of risk management. A good businessman or woman should not be worried about risk. Actually, the higher the risk, the sweeter the what? The returns. But you must manage your risk appetite accordingly. Do your risk management, your planning. You should be able to identify the risk, analyze it, manage it, put in place measures. In the condominium investments, we have several risks. Financial. Are these investors able to access with ease finances? What is their level of liquidity? I thank God that some of the clients that we serve, like Stanbic Bank, Centenary Bank, Housing Finance Bank, Equity Bank, Post Bank, have packages for not only the diaspora but even the local clients. They are able to fill this financial gap. But even for our esteemed clients, we must re-emphasize that they need to do due diligence. And I believe that they do. Because I'm sure they don't want to deal with frauds and dishonest entities. We have environmental risks, which I know you're going to talk about. I earlier alluded to construction and operating risks. We have the materials being expensive, maintenance issues, different what? Risks. I'll not talk about political. Then we have economic risks, volatility of the economy. We have inflation. Fortunately, now it's stable. Interest rates that are always fluctuating. So you must plan accordingly. If you're going to invest in condominiums here, in housing or real estate, you must plan. Because it's not static. You must be alive. You must do your situation analysis. Lastly, for now, let me just re-emphasize the issue of sustainability. And this is an appeal as a human being to every Ugandan and non-Ugandan, and not just touching condominium, housing or real estate. We must ensure continuity. Why? The resources that we have on earth are not sufficient. So, because of the limited resources, we must ensure optimum utilization of these resources. We must ensure sustainability. We are not going to, these funny stories of the West wants to kill all Africans. That is not going to solve the world problems. Have an extinct race. No. We can still live on Earth. Today we're talking about one Earth. But put in place the necessary measures. I'll summarize the real estate sector, housing, condominium, very good investments. Very good. Some challenges, yes, but that shouldn't be a worry. The opportunities are many. Like I noted, there's a deficit. But before you dive in, you should do your situation analysis. You should do your market analysis. You should do your risk analysis. You must engage professionals. I want to thank Kalikumutima and Company Advocates. You have taken it upon yourselves to fill the information gap. If you go to our social media handles, we are talking about something every day. So I must commend you, not because I want a salary increment, but because you're doing an exceptional job to fill the information gap. Many people don't know their rights. Many people don't know that they should not build in a wetland. Howard, today I'm not going to bore you with the talk on frogs and monkeys and what. I know that is your part, environment that I'll surely leave to you. I thank you for now. Our dear listeners, sorry we delayed to come on, but we are here now and we are going to have a long discussion. Thank you.
Amazing. Thank you so much, Councillor Deo Kalikumutima, for giving us such a comprehensive introduction, but also in giving us such a huge head start, again, in light of the context to the challenge of condominium investments in Uganda, but also why we are where we are today. And so, ladies and gentlemen, I would like to bring on board Architect Verna to just bring in to just add really a bit on the introduction, on the context, but also to share with us the perspective of an architect when it comes to condominium investments in Uganda. You're most welcome.
Thank you. Good evening, listeners. Well, Deo said good morning, good night, and yes, all over the world. We're happy that you're listening in. Once again, my name is Verna. I have had an opportunity to work for a developer. I have been on the political wing of local government, a bit of central government regulation, advocacy, and private practice. So I think I have almost like 360-degree appreciation of the challenge we have. But for those who are not familiar with what condominiums are, in a simple way, it's just to say that you subdivide a building and get titles for each unit. You divide a building and get titles for each unit, because before this act, you would not own a building. You'd own the land and everything on it. And so now the condominium comes and Condominium Property Act says, no, you can even own a unit within a building. So that's what it is. And there has to be a building to begin with. So how is this building developed? That's a whole different topic. We have our Building Control Act and all the checks and balances on how the building is built is there. The Condominium Property Act is just a management tool to say that, okay, for this building that is already built, hopefully according to the right procedures and processes, how do we divide it, manage the different owners?
I'm going to be coming back with a few questions, but at this juncture, I would also like to remind the audience that we'll be coming back to pick some questions from you, so please do note them down. But I also like to, at this point in time, welcome Lucy to share with us the perspective of real estate consultant who has been doing this for a very long time, and so we just need to hear from you again, just contributing on the introduction or the context that we understand, but also on the aspect of the opportunities, because we've had so many requirements, as the architect has mentioned, Verna here, but is it still worth it? And Councillor Deo mentioned that in the beginning as well, making mention and alluding to the shortfall when it comes to housing, the 2.4 million, and then the over 200,000 in the urban areas. So statistically there seems to be opportunities, but from your experience in the industry, in the sector, in the field, is it really true that there are opportunities? Because there seem to be hurdles on finding consensus between the developers, the investors, the regulators. There seem to be a lot of hurdles, but navigating all that, are there still opportunities? And in your experience, how can we navigate those hurdles, or how can investors navigate those hurdles to be able to tap into the opportunities that there are?
The opportunities are many. It depends on who you want to target. The capacity for somebody to buy an apartment is all dependent on how much income they're earning. So given the statistics, many of our developers are trying to meet the affordable housing need. Everybody would like to have, at least culturally, we were mentioning before, that everybody would like to at least own a property once in their lifetime. There are those who have the opportunity to own several homes in their lifetime, those that are buying to occupy, those that are buying for investment purposes.
What are some of those challenges, those hurdles that we must overcome, whether it's on the end of the private sector or on the end of government as a regulator, to create an ecosystem in which condominium investments can thrive in Uganda? And then after that, I'll be able to come back to Verna and Council.
I'll speak for the typical buyer. The challenges, obviously, is being able to get value for money when you're paying for a condominium. I will stress that it is important that a typical buyer looks for professional advice before they undertake an investment of this stature. Whether you're buying your first home or whether you're a multi-home owner, you have to look for exactly what Deo said. First of all, you have to, I would urge that you visit an agent to give you a good scope of what the market is able to provide. Many times, I think when you're picking a property, other than the professionals that will help you in the actual purchasing process, you need to know what it is that you're looking for and how much is available in the market so that you can have a good comparable analysis on what you want to go for. So that's the first professional I would advise you to contact. Second, of course, when you've identified a property, is a valuer. After you've ascertained whether you're paying the right price for the property, you also have to contact the people who are in charge of building the property. So you have to talk to the architects. You have to talk to the surveyors so that you can open boundaries. I think you've covered all of this part. So the challenges are, you first have to identify the correct professionals to advising you accordingly, and obviously the banking professionals to look at, if you're borrowing, what the interest rates are and how much you're able to borrow or qualify for. The other hurdles that you can encounter is whether the market will be interested in taking up the product that you've bought. So why are you buying? You have to ask yourself these questions. Why are you buying this property? And what are you actually interested in achieving, and what your risk appetite is? Are you buying several units in one building? Are you looking at expanding your portfolio to minimize your risk? These are all those hurdles that you have to consider before you actually purchase. Also, because we have a lot of off-plan properties that are coming up, I think it's something that Ugandans have now adjusted to. I think if you look at the history of the condominium in Uganda, many times people were purchasing what they can actually see. But now off-plan sales are becoming commonplace, I would say. And a lot of investors are actually offering off-plan sales for several reasons. First of all, you can be able to stagger your payments over a longer period of time. So if you find yourself in a situation where you're not able to come up with the right amount of money with the full amount that is being required, then you can stagger your payment over a period of time, which means that you have to really pay attention to the construction as it's going up. You have to pay serious attention to what the developer is providing, other than the aesthetics, the flyers, the brochures, the way they sell. You as the buyer, you have to take time to ensure that what you're being offered in terms of the sale agreement is actually being met by the developer. So if you look at the amount that goes into developing, how much they intend to sell at, for the developer for it to be worth it for the developer, they have to put in a very high population dense project for it to make financial sense. Now, when you look at the desirability for what the market is interested in, most people will start saying to you, I don't want to live in a development that is, but you want to pay, you know, what dare I say some of the prices, I don't know, 100 million maybe. You know, if you're looking at whatever income stream that somebody has, 100 million, for a developer to give you a product at 100 million shillings, he has to put, you know, maybe 100 units minimum. Minimum. So it's a challenge. It's a challenge. It would require a level of charity almost. They would have to get the land free.
I wouldn't
Which
call
is
it
a challenge.
charity. It's subsidy.
It's subsidy.
Yeah.
It's subsidy. But if you look at a developer, you know, just to look at it, because we work for developers, I work for a developer, and you know, for it to make financial sense, you have to look at, you know, a very, very low priced land,
Which is far away.
Which is far, far away. There are opportunities. There are developers that are considering. There are some which I dare not mention, but that are actually considering doing or have started to do affordable housing in areas where the land has been acquired, you know, significantly long time ago for it to be able. So these are the challenges. So even the word affordable, what does affordable mean? What does affordable housing mean? What price are we actually talking about? Can a university student get a graduate rather get a mortgage? Can they afford to get a mortgage? You know, what is a starting salary for a typical university graduate? You know, these are the questions that have to be answered before we can start talking about affordable housing. So it's a challenge, and I think there are many professionals that are discussing the same to try and see whether it's possible. But yeah, I could just say it's a challenge for now.
Ladies, very wonderful discourse. Now, like I said earlier, we must emphasize the role of professionals, because if you do it right, then I guess you don't need these remedies. But many a times, even when we do things right, push comes to shove, you must go bare knuckle. So in our scenario that I alluded to earlier, we had a petition that is an administrative intervention. So we do have administrative interventions. In our scenario, we petitioned the IGG. Some developers, owners petitioned the Ministry of State for housing. Some even petitioned the Speaker of Parliament. But are these avenues enough to give you legal redress? They may not be, because the last I checked, if you want compensation, I know the IGG does have mandate under the law, but they do not have the mandate to make compensatory orders. Now, for these, you need recourse to courts of judicature. But I must also note, and I thank God that now we do have alternative dispute resolution. I hope it's not abused. Many agreements or purchase agreements have dispute resolution clauses, and they do provide for arbitration. Arbitration is less adversarial compared to the formal conventional litigation, though more conventional or formal than negotiation and mediation, but it's usually a quick remedy. But if the dispute resolution clause in the agreement does not provide for arbitration, and it provides for recourse to court, then you must immediately engage your attorney, though even in the case of arbitration you need an attorney anyway. You must engage them to enable you get the necessary redress. Better you engage them when you're getting into this transaction. It becomes easier to manage. So we do have the administrative interventions, but we also have the other legal processes. I don't know whether architect Verna would like to tell us whether the condominium laws provide for penal sanctions. There are issues. The last time I checked, you're also a lawyer. Are there issues of strict liability, or is that a gap in the Condominium Act and the regulations they are under? One thing that I have noted with land laws, many actually do provide for these statutory offences, but prosecution of the same is a challenge. We do have also a challenge of implementation. We do have a challenge of execution, because I believe in some of these scenarios it's actually clear fraud. So you do not only seek civil redress, but also criminal. You can actually initiate criminal proceedings. And indeed, in the unfortunate scenarios that we have had, we have advised many of our clients to try alternative dispute resolution, that is by way of negotiation, mediation, and arbitration. But if that fails, many are going to seek civil redress, and maybe criminal redress too. Punitive action is to put things right. Is it necessary? Yes. Is it the only solution? No. But now we have no choice. We're not just coming out to send a message. No. We need a permanent solution to this dilemma. Allow me quickly also touch the issue of housing in the value chain that architect Mbabazi talked about. And this is in regard to the question of sustainability. Housing where condominium falls is a very key aspect. We have all discussed that. But it is more key than many of us think, like she told you. The time you spend going to Mukono, the fumes emitted. Now, if we have condominiums in the city center, less fumes, right? But there are also other benefits. Employment. Yes, out of this industry. Sources of government revenue. Habitation, people will live in these, to mention but a few. Supply chain, sourcing of raw materials. The housing discussion needs to be taken seriously. Because housing, the housing sector, the real estate sector, condominiums, are very key. That is why I believe this discussion is even part of the National Development Plan, infrastructure development. Yes. So we should take this discussion seriously and understand that it goes well beyond government. It comes down to the Howards of this world, to the Mbabazis, to the Lucy's, and to the Deos. We need to take this discussion seriously, because if we do, we are talking sustainability, we are talking competitive advantage, we are talking optimal utilization of resources, to mention but a few. I thank you.
Thank you so much, Councillor Deo, on that. And I agree with you entirely, because in our NDP3, even Uganda's Vision 2040, housing is at the heart. It's a critical component, because once you have a growing population at 3.2%, then you're certainly going to, eventually have a population surge or explosion at one point that you need to, be mindful of or be cognizant of in your planning as well. And so, one of the reasons or the rationale behind our conversation this evening, as we start to land the plane, is to really create, some sort of awareness on the, subject of condominium investment or condominiums generally, as we have them, because there's been so many misconceptions, in Uganda, but also across the globe. It's something that many people grapple to understand, that you can own a unit, but you do not own the building. That there are certain amenities, certain spaces that you share with other people, and that you're not renting it, or where there's that option, but that you're actually owning that unit. It's something that is like it baffles many people in Uganda, but also like the understanding of you can actually own an apartment without owning the building, and you're not renting it, but it belongs to you. You even have, because it belongs to you, have a certificate of title to that effect, right? And so you find that many people do not understand that concept, and so you find that many still prefer they would rather go maybe 10, 20 kilometers away from where they work, as opposed to, just owning that unit. But where the world is going, and I think Architect Verna mentioned it, the kind of, the density that we need to have in that regard. And I mentioned Singapore, and they also had that kind of approach, but you find that in simulating the market, you'll be surprised how much awareness needs to be created. And at Kalikumutima and Company, we are committed to demystifying, to debunking some of the myths in matters law, policy, and institutional frameworks, but also on matters sustainable development, because sustainability must be mainstreamed in everything we are doing. And so wherever you are, and this goes to the audience, ladies and gentlemen, you're listening to us, in everything that you do, you must realize that the discussion on sustainability, it starts with us. We must take, that kind of first step. We talk about the complex, aspects. I would like to also add that I think it goes back to the question of due diligence, right? But also, I would like to imagine that an ordinary buyer might not have the keen eye to ask all the questions that must be asked. And I think that goes back to what Council Day was talking about in the beginning, engaging the professionals who have been doing this for the longest time, who know what needs to be done. And for example, here we have Architect Verna, we have Lucy, who is a property consultant, and Council Deo himself. All these in their different rights are professionals in this regard. And so you need to seek the services of a professional so they can guide you, because you find that there's so many requirements that must be met. And many of them are actually, fatal in a way that you find that if you do not fulfill them, then at one point, your ownership is going to be questioned, and you might actually end up, losing, your ownership, but also losing money in that regard. So, and of course, going into some of the dispute resolution mechanisms, or some of the mechanisms that Council Deo mentioned, some of which actually require further expenditure, because if you find that you're going to even spend more, you've lost money already, and then you also need to pursue mechanisms for redress, many of which might actually require you to spend more. So, as Council Deo mentioned, you need to believe, and you need to come to the appreciation that prevention is indeed better than cure, right? And so I think that will be it. We've overshot, but the conversation was very insightful, and I would like to thank my very able panel. Thank you so much, Architect Verna. You did the questions justice, and for sharing with us the insights as well from your experience as an architect, and also Lucy as well. Thank you so much as a consultant in this field. Thank you so much for sharing your perspectives with us. It's been very, very insightful, and I'm more than certain that the audience has benefited, myself as well, getting to hear your perspectives and sharing your insights with us. Thank you so much. But also our host, Council Deo Kalikumutima, as the moderator today. Really, I was just exercising delegated powers. I would like to thank Council Deo as well for his commitment to the cause, because, as you know, he was part of the party that undertook the inspection on behalf of the diaspora owners. But we know that this conversation cannot stop here. It must continue. We have initiated the conversation, and we are committed to continuing with the conversation, not only in condominium investments, but also on other aspects, on the environment, on energy, on sustainability, but also on land rights, on tax, on intellectual property. There's so many things that, again, of pertinence, and our commitment really is to
Kalikumutima and Company Advocates, translating visions into reality. For more information, visit our website www.kalikumutima.com.